Yeah, we're working on that. Woo! All right. Hey, welcome to Hoy. Oh no, I said the wrong thing. Welcome to Moto Talk with Steve and Kim. And hey, if you didn't look like this today, you should have been out there. You should have been out there for sure. Hey, it's great to have you here on the show. Welcome tonight. Hope the weather's been good for you. How many of you rode today? I rode none of my bikes, but I rode about 5 customer bikes today to get them tested.
Yeah, I rode a couple of customer bikes too, and several of my own because it was so nice out.
Yeah, so we've got a few people on. Hit us in the comments if you can hear us all right. We think everything's working. Hey, Greg McKenzie. How you doing, buddy? Hope you were able to get out on the bike today.
This blue one behind me was the first time out since last year, so all good. I would have had it out earlier, but the snow hit.
Hey, Matthew, how you doing, buddy? I'm glad you got out there on the road. Yeah, we've got some great weather right now. I'll tell you what, you rode this one today. Did you ride any others?
I did. I rode several other things today, including customer bikes.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a good day for it. First day really that it was warm early. You know, it's been so cold early in the morning.
Right.
That it was hard to get anything going until like 2:00.
Right.
But it was fine from about noon on today.
Yeah.
It was mid-50s.
Sometimes it's just a pain to bundle up, but you know, if it's 40 plus, I don't mind getting out there.
Yeah, I agree.
And riding. So
with something like this, with some wind protection and a windscreen and gloves, you could ride down to 40 degrees is manageable.
Exactly. And I know others have ridden all winter long. And
Roger Sword out
they don't care about the they don't care about the weather. They don't care how cold it is. Let's see. We don't have any real close upcoming announcements other than this.
We got important ones,
Tuesday.
Just not yeah, exactly.
Right. And then in July we have the Vintage Days at Mid-Ohio. And I think that is, I forgot to write the dates down, but as it gets closer, we'll put those dates up there. But if you have not been to the Vintage Days at Mid-Ohio, the swap meet there is amazing. They've got motocross riding, they've got road racing, and also demo days, right? Or
yeah, and the biggest swap meet you'll see anywhere near the Midwest. Right. I mean, it's there'll be 20,000 people there. Even under these conditions, I'm pretty sure there'll be a big crowd.
It's going to be hot. It's going to be in July. Usually it's in June, isn't it?
It's usually late June, early July, and it's either raining like a monsoon or hot as a core of the sun or both. So you just have to be able to do that and prepare for it. We'll be there in force, though. There'll be four or five of us.
We'll have camper. We'll have our trailer. We'll have a couple bikes to show. We'll be taking some parts to sell. We're going to be at the top of row U.
In Jimmy Connors' spot.
If I'm remembering right. And Jimmy Connors, longtime friend of the shop, has set aside a spot for us that he's been going there for 20 plus years, maybe 30 years.
It's worth going just to see Jimmy because he sleeps underneath the folding table, even if it's raining.
Thank you, Matthew. Let's see. This is April 24th and 5th, the Midwest Swap Meet. Oh yeah. At the Hendricks County Fairgrounds. That is a great announcement to put
Danville.
Up there. This is usually not in Danville.
That's right.
So it's usually at the Marion County Fairgrounds. And it's mostly Harley, if I remember right, but they're going to have it in Danville this year.
Yeah, and this place, the fairgrounds in Danville, if you haven't been there, is if you take US 36 like you're going to go to Danville, you turn at the Walmart, and the fairgrounds is right there on the corner of the roundabout. It should be a nice place. Yeah. Should be good. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was toward the end of the year in the fall, there's going to be another big event that maybe some of you are aware of, maybe some of you aren't. It's this shirt I'm wearing. This shirt I'm wearing is the Artomobilia in Carmel. It's almost like a Pebble Beach for the Midwest. There's very high-end vehicles there. People routinely bring $1 million plus vehicles. There was a Lamborghini Miura there last year that was a $15 million vehicle, and the guy was letting little kids get in and out of it. So
just tell the story real quick about how you were able to bring in some motorcycles and what we're going to be able to do this year.
Yeah, so I got to know the guy who coordinates it. His name's John Leonard, and he's been managing the thing for quite a while, and he's split it out into some specific things like something called Porsche Palooza and some other things where people bring a particular brand of something. And they tried having motorcycles there one year, but it was Tom Woods MVs, and it was very difficult for people to relate to those bikes. They didn't really see what they wanted. So I met with John and we talked about having something more vintage oriented, and he decided that that would be a really good idea. So he's having a motorcycle corral this year. There'll probably be other people there, but the Hoy Vintage team is going to have probably somewhere like a dozen bikes to show there, including some that are coming from others. We've got, very high end stuff. We're going to bring Vladimir's Egley Vincent. He's going to bring that. We're going to have some other things that should make for a really good show, and we'll be sending you a link about that. But try to make it if you can. It's really cool. They shut down all of downtown Carmel for like 6 blocks in every direction, and there's hundreds and hundreds of vehicles. So it's really a fun thing to do.
And back to the vintage days at Mid-Ohio, you will see more CT70s than you think that exist.
Yeah, that's probably right.
And you will see more people on pit bikes, and it's not quite like you see in maybe the Dominican or India with all the motorcycles going everywhere, but it's kind of
but
like
it's sort of like that.
It's kind of like
yeah,
that.
You're going to see people wearing wife beaters and shorts and flip-flops riding in the mud.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty cool.
All right. Well, one of our themes tonight is riding in another country. If you are a motorcycle enthusiast, and we have a special guest with us tonight, and it's Kim's daughter, Erin. And Erin spent 6 years in the Uganda, which is a country in Eastern Africa. I'm going to bring Erin in right now. And
there she is.
Hey, Erin, how are you today?
Hi, good evening. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, do you have anything to say?
I do. So I had the
daughter.
Yeah, I know. I had the great pleasure to have the best host anybody could possibly ask for, going to travel to a number of places. But one of my favorites was Africa. And Erin spent a great deal of time there representing the United States. And some of the things we were able to do in Africa were terrific, things that other people would like to do, see the animals, see the people, see the countryside and that sort of thing. And we got top brass kind of tour out of that because Erin was so knowledgeable about the place. But it was really, really different to go to Uganda, where Erin actually lived, and ride a motorcycle. And she had already developed a series of skills doing that, which was pretty amazing all by itself.
She wasn't a tourist.
Not really. She was a native motorcycle rider in Uganda, in downtown Kampala, in addition to others. So that being said, I've never seen anything quite like it until I got there. And she was terrific in explaining to me how it worked and hooking me up with a motorcycle we could ride together. So I'll just let Erin tell you about what it was like, and Steve and she'll talk about it.
How's that for an intro? Anyway, great to have you here, Erin. I have just a thought of a couple questions to ask you. The first one is, when did you realize that you liked motorcycles while growing up, knowing that your dad had such a passion for them? What's the story there?
Sure. I always knew I liked motorcycles. I have early memories of sitting on the gas tank in between my dad's arms with my feet up over the handlebars. Of course, we didn't ride that way, but I remember doing it. And I remember riding on the back from the time my feet were big enough to touch the pegs. So I always enjoyed that. And I
enjoyed doing on the rides. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I still do. I learned to ride when I was about 15, but I didn't do it as much. Okay. But it changed when I got overseas, and it became a primary mode of getting from A to B for me.
Yeah, it's a little different over there. It's not recreational hobby as much as it here is in the States, is it?
That's right. It was less of a sport and more of a necessity for me.
Yeah. One of the things I learned there was that the people in Africa refer to a motorcycle as a boda boda. And if I have this right, correct me if I'm wrong, Erin, but if I have this right, it's a rough translation of the fact that motorcycles go from border to border in Africa. And when you're in Africa, everybody's got a motorcycle. It's not an unusual thing to see. There's hundreds of thousands of them.
Well, that's true of Uganda. I haven't been all over the continent to know how it is everywhere, but in the part of Africa where I lived in Uganda and the capital city, Kampala, boda bodas, those border motorcycle taxis, were the primary means of transport for a lot of citizens. And they were my inspiration for getting around. A motorcycle in Kampala, Uganda was the fastest, cheapest, most reliable, and most fun means of getting where you needed to go.
Absolutely. So what took you to Uganda? You lived in the States, and tell us that story.
Sure. In short, work took me to Uganda.
Okay.
I'm a Foreign Service officer. I work for the United States government. I'm not speaking in that capacity tonight. I'm just here as a motorcycle enthusiast. But I worked at the U.S. Embassy there in Kampala and had a great time. Moved there in 2015 after working in New Delhi, India, which was another fun experience, different kind of motorcycling. But Uganda is where I had the most fun.
Now, one maybe funny thing is you did not take your dogs on the motorcycle with you, correct?
I would if I could, but no. My 2 Saint Bernards don't fit on the motorcycle.
No, I will say though that we one of the things we did together as a group was to try to find the most outrageous thing we saw on a motorcycle when we were driving from place to place in Uganda, and we did see some outrageous things on a motorcycle. I think there was one bike that had 5 people on it, if I remember that correctly. And then there was also a motorcycle carrying 2 guys and another motorcycle. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, that's right. And I see my friend Jean Wojnicki on here. Jean and her husband John were also often found on the back of a motorcycle, specifically a BMW. And I'm glad to see you, Jean. But she had
welcome.
We had many conversations about the best thing on a boda, and I think she coined that term. And we saw people using their bodas to transport things that were often bigger than their motorcycle, and that was pretty cool.
It was cool.
That's neat. I'm going to throw a couple pictures up here before I forget about them. Now you can give us some commentary on these, Erin. And
yeah,
so you're sporting the Hoy Vintage Cycle shirt here.
Yeah, she's rocking the local stuff.
Yep, I'm flying my HVC colors, and that's my friend John Wojnicki there. And what we're doing is we put our motorcycles on a ferry that had other motorcycles, other cars. You see on our side there a truck full of sand. We rode up to the water's edge, rolled our bikes onto a ferry in Entebbe, and rode it across Lake Victoria to another part of the road. And that was just cool to take your motorcycle on an auto train ferry kind of thing, and use it as a way to get from A to B. We were packed on tightly there, but it was a lot of fun to ride that way.
That's awesome. Now I'm a little naive here. How far is this from where you were staying in Kampala?
Sure. So that's where the equator crosses.
It is there. Okay.
Yeah, Uganda is right on the equator, and that's where the northern and southern hemisphere meet. And that ride out to the equator marker was about an hour 10 minutes from where we lived in Kampala. So my biker enthusiast buddies and I hopped on our motorcycles, and we rode out there to the equator crossing, took a picture where north meets south, had a snack out there, a special kind of food that's kind of like an East African burrito called a Rolex, and then rode back into the capital.
Yeah, so there's something else important. Yeah, I was going to say there's something important going on there. That's Erin's first love in Uganda was that motorcycle, and you can't buy that motorcycle in the United States. In fact, it's so rare you can't bring it to the United States, as you found out. But it was a great bike, and it's much bigger than the average Ugandan motorcycle.
That's cool.
Tell us about that one.
Well, sure, and I'll tell you about Susie. She was a 125, which is perfect for the kind of riding that I did in Uganda, which was mostly urban on packed streets with lots of cars. But she was on the smaller side, Dad, of the motorcycles that we saw there. The most common motorcycle by far, what most of those Boda taxis were, was a Bajaj Boxer. And that's a 250 made in India. And they were imported in large numbers to East Africa. They have an interesting shift pattern where neutral's all the way down at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4 up. That took a lot of getting used to, as did riding on the other side of the road, or the British side of the road, which you'll do if you ride in East Africa.
Put up that picture of the one that I gave you of the lady who said, yeah, that one.
There we go.
That bike in the background is a Bajaj Boxer. That particular one's a 150, and they're tough as nails. And again, I think it's exclusive to Uganda. Do I have that right, Aaron? They have some kind of deal with the Indian company that makes those bikes, and that's one of the reasons why they're imported so much.
I'm not sure what the import rules are around the Boxer, but I know it's the thing that I saw the most on the street there.
Yeah, and that particular one is way nicer than most of the ones you see. The ones you see are pretty well worn and don't look shiny anymore. That one right there must be pretty new. And one other little interesting thing there is the lady who's facing the motorcycle, that is a shotgun across her lap. She was the security for the grocery store that we went to visit in that exact spot right there when I took that picture.
Awesome. And the little guy holding the bananas, that was a good friend of yours.
Well, that's a little girl. Her name is Mercy,
okay.
And she would sell bananas outside of there. And I would walk down to the grocery store if I wasn't on my motorcycle and park my dog outside the shop while I went in to do my shopping. And she'd take care of the dog, and then I'd pick her up on the way out. And Mercy was a sweet little kid. Yeah.
Mercy. Okay. Awesome. All right, I'm going to go back up to these other pictures. And obviously this is when you were out there visiting.
Yep. We
went on some rides.
We borrowed that motorcycle from a colleague of hers, and I got to ride the local fair, and it was pretty cool. I mean, it's not exactly something you'd want to ride out on the interstate at all or in American riding generally, but it was perfectly fine and capable for that riding there. And I adapted to it pretty well, and it was nice. That bike belonged to someone who I think got it almost new, and it's a really nice one. Similar color to yours, Susie.
Yep, that bike belonged to my friend Matt. He was a good friend of mine who I actually taught to ride a motorcycle. He's an American who I was serving with there in the embassy, and he wanted to learn to ride in Uganda for the same reasons I did. It was just the fastest way to get from A to B, but he had never ridden before. So I took him to the embassy and taught him on Susie how to ride a motorcycle. And then we went together to the dealership, and he bought that for himself. And I rode it home for him. We practiced a little bit on his fenced in property, and then he got pretty proficient with it, but was kind enough to lend it to you, Dad, when you came out for our trip around Kampala on motorcycles.
If I recall correctly, he was having some second thoughts because he had a little incident and then was a little bit reticent to get back on it.
Well, yeah, Kampala is not the best place to learn how to ride.
Not at all.
The amount of cars on the road far exceeds the amount of cars that those roads were built for. There's some room for improvement in road maintenance. There's some pretty big potholes. There's a lot of pedestrians. There are sometimes animals in the road at all different hours. So it's a tough place to ride. It's a great place to ride for fun, but there's a lot of low speed maneuvering around hazards that you'll need to learn if you go do that.
Yeah, well, she's being very humble about this, but I got to tell you, of all the urban environments I've ridden in, and I've been in Los Angeles, I've been in DC, I've ridden all over the place, but the only place I've ever ridden like Kampala was Kampala itself. It was like a sea of fish, hundreds and hundreds of motorcycles. There's no traffic directional control. There's only a very few stoplights, and the stoplights there are, people almost summarily ignore them unless there's a policeman in the middle of the street telling you to stop. Almost no one does. And they literally blend like fish in the ocean when they're moving from one direction to the other direction. Mm-hmm. You don't turn in front of them and wait. You go among one another going opposite directions. And it's just like bleeding one group of people into another one. And oddly enough, there wasn't a lot of crashing going on. They were going at a pretty good clip. But I will tell you, the fastest motorcycle on the street in Uganda was ridden by that person. I had a challenge keeping up with her, and it wasn't because the bike wasn't capable. It's because she was zooming in and out of it so quickly. It was pretty impressive. I got to say props to you for all of that.
Well, thanks, Dad. You kept up. We made our own paths, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah. Sometimes I wish that we had some of the freedoms to split lanes here in Northern Virginia that I did in Kampala.
Yeah, don't do it in Virginia. It's a bad plan.
Sure is.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
I have another picture to pop up here if you want to talk. One of you wants to talk about this.
Yeah, so this was a guy riding a 250, an XR 250, and honestly, that was probably the most exotic bike I saw there the whole time we were there.
That's a real Honda.
It's a real Honda, and it's something that you could buy here pretty easily, but it was the only one of those I saw there. I did see a TX200, one of those fat tired Yamahas, or XT, and my brother has one, and I think Stephanie has one. But I saw a couple of those and took some pictures, but I couldn't find them for this.
So is this a random?
This is a guy who's just parked along the street. He might be an Uber. There were a lot of people that got phone calls and they would go pick someone up and take them somewhere. That was a real business there.
Yeah, there's a service there, kind of like Uber for motorcycle taxis, where you use your smartphone to order up a taxi and someone drives up with an orange vest on a motorcycle. Not usually that one, usually the Bajaj Boxer, and picks you up and takes you where you're going, just like Uber. But I think this was my neighbor, Dad, that you photographed here.
On the street going back to the close where you lived.
Mm-hmm.
We passed him walking to the store where the lady was sitting there with the shotgun. Yep.
I'll trust your memory.
The only experience I've had with something like this is when I took a trip to the Dominican, and we went to one of our friends from church came with us, and so it was nice to have someone that could speak the language fluently or at all. And we went to her hometown and tried to find a touristy spot to buy a few little things. And I wasn't into the shopping part, so I got out on the sidewalk and I was just watching. I was in awe of all the motorcycles. I could not believe how many motorcycles there were. And I don't know if it's like this in the Uganda, but I noticed that there were some vans and some buses that went back and forth, but some people would get off of their bus or their van, and then they would take a motorcycle taxi back into where their home is. Like maybe it's 10 or 20 blocks away, but they would get off on a main street and then get on a motorcycle on the back, and the taxi would take them all the rest of the way home. Do they do anything like that over there in Uganda?
Yeah, that's a common thing, actually. The roads were not built for the number of cars that are there. So oftentimes, if you were in a car, you'd wait an hour to go what a motorcycle would do in 5 minutes. So a lot of folks would get tired of waiting in the car and hop out of their four-wheeled conveyance and get on a boda taxi and go to their end destination. I recall leaving the office at the same time as my colleagues and getting home sometimes an hour before they did if they were driving cars and I was on my bike.
Got to use your smarts.
Yeah, one of the things I remember seeing there that I was fascinated by was that they would call one of these drivers, they'd pick them up, and the person would get on the motorcycle and be on their phone sitting side saddle.
Oh yeah.
The whole time they're riding it. They had no idea who was riding that bike, and they just were fearless. I mean, it was so common. It was very common. And the other thing I remember while we're talking about it is they didn't like to buy gasoline any more often than they had to. And one common thing that you would see is a guy would be off to the side of the road on his motorcycle, and he'd have it laying on its side trying to shake the gas from one side of the tank to the other, so it would go another 50 feet so they could ride it. And of course they get, I don't know, 80, 90 miles to the gallon in one of those things. You know, it's one of the reasons why they're so low performance is because they use gas very sparingly.
Aaron, in the Dominican, I noticed that there were a lot of motorcycles carrying propane tanks and different items that they would take from home, get them filled up, take them back home. Would they have the same thing there?
Oh, yeah. Motorcycles are the easiest way to get around, and a lot of people use them to carry whatever you need to carry. I think my favorite thing that I saw someone carrying on a motorcycle was another motorcycle that was inverted and resting on top with the wheels taken off. So that wouldn't be legal in the States, but it's innovation. And I really enjoyed seeing how people innovated as using their motorcycles to transport things. But there's also incredible mechanics that innovate in resource scarce environments to fix their bikes. And I saw innovative solutions to all kinds of different things at mechanic shops in Uganda. So if you go, that's something that'd be neat to check out, is to see how people improvise when the part isn't there, or if the money isn't there for the part, people get real creative.
Yeah, it was fun
awesome
to see the interpretation people made of their motorcycles. They were all painted differently, some of them hand done. And my favorite thing to see on motorcycles while we were there in some of the further out parts of the country were bananas. Sometimes you'd see bananas the size of a Buick on the back of a motorcycle. I mean, it was crazy how many bananas they can carry on a motorcycle. It was really crazy.
That's amazing.
It was fun.
Well, hey, Aaron, thanks so much for coming on and talking about your experience riding in motorcycles in different countries. That's pretty cool. We've got another person to show some pictures and tell their story a little bit. But love to have you on again sometime and tell the dogs we said, hey, there's one of the big boys, big girls.
That's Dora. So next show for you will be to tell us about riding in DC.
Okay, that sounds good. I appreciate you being on. Lucy says hello, and have a good night, everybody.
All right, you take care. Bye-bye. All right, that's
that
cool.
was fun.
That's very interesting.
I don't have to call her tonight.
Yeah, you don't have to call her.
Already did that.
Awesome. Now I can get back to the comments here. Let's see. Gene is talking about a Baja dealership in the U.S. They're going to hook us up. A dealer in Indiana. That's cool. Well, hey, I've got another. I actually put a post out there and asked for some information, and I got an email from John Senot. Is that how you would say that?
Yes.
Okay. So the story is, and I need to grab a couple pictures here. John and his wife decided that they decided to sell everything they owned except for 6 suitcases, and his 2001 BMW R12C, and they moved to the Republic of Panama. And so he shipped the bike down there and rode the crud out of it all over the country. Let's see. They have a vivacious, enthusiastic, and inclusive motorcycle culture down there. If you are on 2 wheels, you belong. And another thing that he said was that having a BMW down there, which that is a huge bike to probably have down there.
Yeah, it'd be like seeing that thing in Africa.
Yes.
Really peculiar.
And there are no BMW mechanics down there.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
He said that he would get on YouTube quite a bit, and he would look up how to do things, how to do regular maintenance, how to do some fixes, and basically had to learn how to do it himself. And I'll read some of what he said here. Of course, he said the scenery is spectacular. Maintenance was unheard of. There were no BMW motorcycle dealers in the country. On several occasions, he got pulled over by cops just so they could look at his bike because they've never seen one of those down there.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. You don't even see very many of those in the U.S.
And I'm going to flip through a few pictures here. So, John, I really appreciate you sending the story and the pictures. It looks like they have
that's a good crew.
Very cool motorcycle culture down there. And you could go pretty much anywhere and find a group of people that really have a love for the 2 wheels. That's for sure.
Looks like fun.
Looks like he was getting thumbs up from some other people that were down there. Here's a nice shot of him and his wife cruising down the road.
Yeah, it's funny. That bike under the covers is just like this one behind me.
Is it really?
Yeah. Okay. If you look at it, it's configured the same way. It just looks different.
We have a friend of the shop, a customer actually, who owns 2 of those. That's the same bike?
Same bike. Yep.
So here he is doing some maintenance.
Wow. He's all up in that one.
That's pretty cool, John. All right. Well, hey, let's head over to Kim. He's going to give us a couple of motorcycle essentials.
Yeah. So in the last minute or so, I'm going to show you 2 things. These are for vintage bikes in this case. If you don't already know about this stuff, you need to learn about it quickly. It's called aerocroil. I used to think that using other kind of penetrants was good stuff. Even, there's PB Blaster and some other things, but this is magic. And we learned about this from our co-worker, Mike Hubert. And he said, yeah, you got to try this stuff. It's something we use in aircraft, and it really is magical. So it's pricey, but it's worth every penny. So you need to get this stuff. The other thing I want to talk about that you probably don't know you need it, but you do, is this. This is a set of screwdriver bits. And of course, everybody has screwdriver bits, but these are different. These are the kind of screwdriver bits you need to work on your Japanese motorcycle, because Japanese screwdriver heads aren't Phillips heads. They're JIS. It's a Japanese international standard, and they have a different shape and a different depth and a different angle, and it'll prevent you from screwing up all the bolts and screws on your motorcycle. Now, these are made to go into a standard hex, that you'd put on the end of a screwdriver or something you might have, but it'll also fit into an impact driver if you have to do it that way, or a handheld electrical impact. That'll be on a subsequent show. But these aren't expensive. I think this was $15 or $20. They're real high quality. You can buy them on eBay, but you need a set of these if you're going to work on your Japanese bike.
You want to leave those here for me?
No. These are mine.
All right, there's your motorcycle essentials for the week there. And we have a safety tip of the day. Manufacturers suggest changing out your blinker fluid, your brake fluid, every couple of years. It was interesting that Mike Hubert actually came up with that this morning. So we were talking about safety tips, and we had a bike come in. It was a KLR 650, and he wanted his brakes, front and rear brakes bled.
Okay.
And the hydraulics part of it. And they were working fine. They were working absolutely fine. But once Mike dug in, he found that the fluid was just nasty.
Yeah, what happens to it is it gets water in it. Mm-hmm. And when the water gets in it, it causes the parts inside the braking system to rust.
So does it get water because of condensation, hot and cold type thing? Or
there's a couple of different kinds of brake fluid you can use. Synthetic brake fluid is not, I'm going to get the word wrong, but it's hygrostatic. I think it doesn't allow water to develop. Whereas normal brake fluid, .3, .4, stuff like that, it can, hygroscopic, I think is what it's called. It will tend to develop water in it at the low points of the braking system, and it will cause corrosion and stuff. So you do have to change it out. And most cars, bikes, whatever, don't use .5 synthetic or the kind that doesn't mess up your paint.
Okay.
So synthetic brake fluids like that. So you got to keep that in mind, and it's worth doing. It's worth changing out every couple of years.
Well, the master cylinders were working fine. The calipers were working fine. So basically we did a straight flush and put brand new stuff in there after cleaning out, and you're good to go. So
sounds like something Mike might
do that every couple of years. Yep. And the other safety tip is always do a pre-trip and post-trip on your bikes. Probably just say that every week, because
first thing I did before I rode this was check the tire pressures, and they were all low. So back to.
There you go. All right. Well, hey, thanks for checking in. Thanks for tuning in, and hope to see you next week on Moto Talk with Steve and Kim. We'll see you later.